This is the RSPB's reserve at Arne in the south of Dorset. It kicked off in 1965. I missed that, I was only 4, but I caught up much later in the 1980s and I've been coming here ever since. It's one of my favourite reserves anywhere in the world, actually. And I think the reason for that is that although it's got a great range of habitats, at its core is sandy lowland heath. And this is a very important habitat. It's very rare in the world. In the UK, Dorset, Hampshire, Surrey, and we haven't been kind to our heathland in recent times. We've fragmented it, we've built upon it, we've burned it, and it is a habitat that's been made through human modification of the land. You know, this is the result of decades, hundreds of years of grazing, and if you leave it to its own devices, it will revert to woodland, and we really don't want that, because it's home to a whole range of species which exist here on the northern edge of their European range. So things like Dartford warbler, things like smooth snake, things like many of the invertebrate species. Essentially the soil is sandy, the habitat is open, it should be, not today it's been raining, a warm habitat. So species that like it warm, reptiles, insects, and birds that need to feed on insects throughout the course of the winter rather than migrate, the Dartford warbler, like living here. It's not just about those rare species, it's about the feel of that habitat as well. It smells great. You know, you've got gorse, and when the sun beats down on the gorse, you get that lovely coconut aroma. You've got the aromatic sense of the heather and many of the other plants that grow here, things like bog myrtle in the wetter bits. So for me, it's a bit of home is where the heart is, and my heart is certainly in this habitat. Now, things have moved on since 1965, indeed since 1980, and Arne is now part of one of our first super national nature reserves. And this is more intelligent conservation. This is not throwing a fence around one little packet of land, trying to keep it the same as it was in the good old days. This is about integrating that into a wider landscape which has sustainability and resilience. Because, look, frankly, and we certainly hope not, if there was a catastrophic fire at Arne, that would be a disaster. We can't afford to take that risk. We need it to join up with lots of other habitats on this part of the Purbeck Peninsula, and that's the grand plan. And it's not just a grand plan, it's actually in progress. So coming back to Arne, what do I like that's here? Favourite bird? Difficult. I mean, it's changed. Now we've got white-tailed eagles and ospreys flying over Arne. That certainly wasn't part of life in the 1960s and 80s. I'm going to go for nightjar. Nightjars for me are enigmatic, difficult to get to know, crepuscular, come out in the evening, difficult to see, highly camouflaged. Used to be rare, going through a period of increase at the moment, which is nice. So, you know, they are weird as well as wonderful. And last year we watched the nightjar here, the female, inexplicably eat one of her own young. And it's those little cameos, those moments that we see on Spring Watch that we wouldn't see, you know, in a lifetime of watching natural history, just standing out there with our binoculars. That's the great joy of using that technology to uncover more about the birds and the wildlife that we love. Other animals, I'm going to go not smooth snake, which is one of our rarest reptiles. I'm going to go grass snake, which does occur here as well. And that's again because of a childhood affinity. I used to go out after school catching grass snakes. For me, they're one of the most beautiful animals on the planet. They are exquisite, and they're very much part and parcel of my early forays out into the countryside, and where I'd catch these grass snakes and I'd bring them home to a large tank that my father had helped me build in the garden. We'd keep them for a couple of weeks, and then we'd take them back and replace them with other, hopefully bigger snakes. I always want to catch the biggest grass snake ever. Never managed that. And then going forward, what would I like to see that's here? Well, that would come down to those invertebrates. And there are certain species that I have seen here, but not for a long time. And that's only through want of, you know, not having the opportunity to look. They're still here, they're still prospering here. And one of them is a small spider called Thermisus anustus. It's a species of crab spider, and it is bubblegum pink. I mean, I'm not joking, it's candy pink. And the reason for that is that it rests principally on the flowers of a relation of heather or ling called crossed leaf heath. And it grows in the sort of wetter parts, and it's got a clump of pink flowers. And the crab spider rests upon that, perfectly camouflaged, and it's aggressive mimicry. It's mimicking the colour of the flower because it's aggressively predating bees that come to feed. And they're devils to find because they're so well camouflaged. But I came here with a fellow in the 1980s called Peter Merritt. He was one of the country's leading arachnologists at that point. I was in awe of his knowledge and his field skills. And he took me out here and he showed me how to find these spiders. And you know, and it was again, you know, in my diary you'll see I was eulogising about that with enormous enthusiasm. So yeah, I'd like to see Thermisus anustus again. I can't say I've probably seen it in the last 15 years, and you never know whether you've got another 15 yet left. So you know, better pursue that. I think that, just to wrap up, Arne for me is a fabulous, accessible place. They've got a great visitor centre, they've got a cafe, they've got great staff, they've got an amazing range of volunteers who come here and give up their time freely to make sure that any visitors enjoy the best experience. I think in the past you might have argued that it was very much a place you come in the summer, but now it's all year round. They've got marsh harriers here, they've got hen harriers in the winter, you've got all the waders and wildfowl that visit from further north in Europe into Poole Harbour. You've got spoonbills, you know, that you can see out here that are spending a bit more time on Brownsea, but you see them here. And of course now you've got those white-tailed eagles, and you never know at any time of the year whether you're going to look up and see one of these barn doors flying over. So I would strongly advocate that if you have the time and an interest in natural history, you make your way to Arne. And part of that is supporting everything that people are doing here. You know, this is, okay, it's a nature reserve, but it's about people too. And unless people come and enjoy it in the way that we do on Spring Watch, and I have all of my life, then when it comes to the crunch, we won't have the love as a fuel to protect nature. And that's implicitly important. And whilst I would say watch Spring Watch, you know, obviously, I think that, you know, watching wildlife on TV is a great way of instigating an interest. To truly satisfy it, you've got to come here and see it and feel it and smell it for yourself. Because unfortunately, as much as we do to show you, you know, the brilliant flora and fauna of Arne, you won't be able to smell that coconut aroma of that gorse. And that is important. Come and have a sniff.